I actually don't know what I'm doing.
That's just the way of it at this point.
I don't understand.
Oh, I hit escape. Hey! New for 2018. They fixed it.
So I'll have to cut that part out.
Yes, I guess you will.
All right, so I've heard great things about statusing in 2018. I've heard that there's a lot more options and that it's more powerful, but possibly less intuitive.
Yeah.
So it could use some training. So I was hoping today, because I tried to do it over the weekend while I was checking, to really use this. And I think I got it to work, but I definitely didn't use it to its full ability. So I'm hoping you can teach me a little bit more. You know, one of the great things about us shooting these videos in this format is that I actually don't know what I'm doing. So
That's a scary thought.
I actually do have to ask these questions. Like, I could use 2018 just fine. I can navigate, but I don't use it in depth. I mostly do checking and some scrubbing here and there. And like, I can model just about anything, but I'm doing it as if I'm still using version 7.3. So a lot of these new features, I don't know all that well because I don't use it that much.
Right. Yeah, there's been a lot of advances, especially in the past couple of versions. 2017 was good. 2018's got even more power to it. And the ability to do things like status select, which we'll get into in another video. There's a lot of great stuff you can use to really drill down to what it is you're after these days.
Yeah, I think that might be too why I'm so obnoxious as far as the interface goes, because I don't know where all this stuff is, where a lot of the users have they're so used to it being in this strange place that it's just okay to them. And to me, I find it offensive.
Right. Okay, so you want to go ahead and just jump on in?
Okay, all right, let's go to it.
Okay, so in this model, we've got a bunch of decking material to be modeled in just so that we were clear on where everything needed to go. So first thing out of the gate, we want to be able to hide that. All right, so what I'll do is question mark is the keyboard shortcut, launches me right into the status display filters. And I believe we've got one already set up as hide deck, although that may have been in 2017.
There's one right there.
Am I blind?
It's the third one down.
Oh, okay, as everything else, hide deck. Okay, so if I double click on it, I should probably point this out. If you click on it, it hides it. Okay, see how it goes white? Click on it again.
That actually messed with me because I thought when it was blue, it was active, and when it was white, it was not active. But no, just hidden. It's
right. So this little icon right here that I don't know what that is your set active.
It's a slider.
Is that a slider?
Yeah.
Sure. Why not have sliders on all of them then going the other way? But anyway, so if you want to set something specifically as active, you need to right click on that one and go to set active. There are the same little toggles over here. These would be more like what you're talking about, where you've got the option back and forth. And this will change.
One active at a time?
Yes, you only get one active status at a time.
Oh, see, I thought that these were like...
No, these are not a stack of all active at once. These are preloaded ones that you can pick between.
Okay.
And let me show you why. If you have all of these loaded, I can go in. If I already have a list of everything loaded that I want, I can then pick the specific item from a drop down. So if I want failed connections to be red, those were all graphical. I can pick detailed as gold, rest is gray. Anything I have set up, I can select, and it will just go to that particular setting. So this one in particular, that hides the decking, which there it goes, and it also goes into our model checking status display. So I'm going to launch back into the status display configuration.
Now, I don't suppose that you can set a shortcut key to a status display.
I don't believe you can. However, at one point, I know that somebody came up with a way of running a parametric that would set the specific one you wanted and then turning it on.
You could tie that to a shortcut key.
Yeah, well, no, parametric launchers can't be tied to shortcut keys. Yeah, so you could have at least a bunch of buttons that would turn it on. But at this point, because you now have that list, it kind of made that whole thing kind of obsolete. And there is a keyboard shortcut to toggle the display on and off. So, I mean, there's that. But as far as picking one specifically and turning it on, okay. So like I said, if you click that, it goes away. Click it back, that becomes your focus and turns it back on in your view. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on this one to get me into one in particular we want. And I believe, what is it? Fully collapse all? I forget. Let's try collapse all. No. Fold leaves? That pretty much hides everything. Okay, so now I will just see this one particular thing, but it does have all of its leaves folded. But it does kind of clear up the view a little bit as far as what it is I'm looking at. I'm not going to get too much into these, as these are more in depth of our member custom properties.
Sure.
But as far as, you know, the initial setup of it, we have it set up to hide any member whose material type is floor and deck. So right off the bat, that's going to hide any member that's got its main member material type as decking.
Okay, awesome.
Which is the status you were after there.
Yep.
Okay, now you can also set colors, obviously, other than masked. And if you wanted to add another condition to this priority number, then you click on this plus button, and it will add in that extra type. And it's kind of like it used to work before, except there's a lot more choices now. So now you can go in and do bolt status, all kinds of stuff under that. So if you want to find just your TC bolts, highlight those, you can do that. Holes, materials, there's a lot more stuff than what there used to be. It really is worth a look just to kind of go through and see what it is that you've got now.
Yeah, one of my gripes about this particular window was, especially under member status, the list of stuff is so long because they've made this so powerful that it's hard to actually find out. Go to member status.
Go to member status. Yep.
Yeah, it's actually hard to find the one that you're looking for because these aren't in any type of order. They're
right. Yeah, I do wish that these were in alphabetical order. I think what they tried to do is put your more common sorts of things up near the top, perhaps. But to me, it would have been better if it was done alphabetically.
Yeah, or even take another level of menu, like, you know, all those left end, right end things
Sure.
could have been sorted out, and that would have made that much shorter. Because if you're looking through 10 things, it's not really a problem. But I was trying to find member custom property, and I was just, you know, a little
right. And even another possibility could be to not just put it necessarily in alphabetical order, but let's say it's in a descending order as you would find it in the member edit screen. That might be another good way to do it.
Right.
But, you know, as it is, you're just going to have to kind of learn where things are and read every line until you find it.
Yeah.
That's just the way of it at this point. But the other thing that you can do is you're not just selecting member now. You can pick the ends in particular. You can set left and right if you want to just highlight the left or right end of something.
Yeah, and that's actually a big one. That's one that I fell in love with because, you know, specifically failed connections, anything that's been sent to a plain end, if it's got a moment connection on it, all of that stuff you can find much more intuitively.
Right.
And then we'll talk about status select in a couple of minutes. That's when that really gets more powerful.
Okay, so is there anything else that you want to see in this in particular?
Well, talk about, just for a minute, the priorities and what that means. How does that work?
Okay, so when you're setting this up, you want to try to think about your strictest, most stringent priority first. So in terms of our checking display, we want something that is fully checked and has had all of its member custom property checkboxes checked off. If it has all of those things, then it gets the top priority. So just to scroll through this, what you'll see is this is all of our different settings that we'll check off. All right. The next priority down will have stuff from this list, but it'll have a couple less. So if you don't have all of these items, but you do have all of these, it goes to the next color. And you just work your way down the list, and you're going to get a smaller and smaller priority list on each until you get to the bottom, and then beyond that, I don't care. But you want to set your minimum priorities at the very bottom and special cases at the top. So what we have set up first is, first and foremost, if it's deck, we want it hidden. The second is if the model checker has noted an error message and he's plugged that into the member edit, or not the member edit, the member custom property screen, I want that to be showing up as, I want that gold, I want that to get my modeler's attention. After that is fully checked, and then we go down through the layers of checked as we go.
So priority 1 is the last thing checked. So if it's got a color to priority 1, that's going to be the color that sticks, because it's basically, it's going to set all the other colors on the way. But once it gets to priority 1 and says, okay, priority 1 says yellow, it's yellow, right?
Right. So what it does is it checks it against priority 1. If it matches that, it's done. If it doesn't match that, it checks priority 2. If it matches that, it's done. If it doesn't match that, and it works its way down the list, and it will be the color that is highest on the priority list that it matches. And it will ignore anything else that it matches below. And the other thing that you can do is you can use these up and down arrows to move the priorities up and down. So if error message is more important to me than deck, I can swap that up, and now that becomes my top priority, and I can then move it back down, bring it back down to priority 2. Little trash can icon obviously is going to delete that whole priority. And this plus will actually add another priority item below the one that you're clicking from. And then the other thing that you can do, if you just want to temporarily disable something, I just want to shut down this priority 1 temporarily. We can apply that, and you'll see that the decking comes back. Because now we're not going to hide things that are decking that priority 1.
Okay, now I see that you've got a pretty extensive list of things to check in priority 3.
Yes.
And that your priorities underneath it all have a similar list. Is there a way to copy that priority and all of the rules underneath it?
So your easiest move that I've found is you create that most stringent list with all of the items.
Mm-hmm.
When you create a new one, it will actually make a carbon copy of that one below it. And then you just take off the ones that you don't want. So this one's priority 3 orange. So if I copy it, I get exactly another priority 3 orange, but now it's in priority 4, and it will be exactly the same. So now all I have to do,
pro tip right there.
Yes, you click your little garbage cans and you delete out the ones you don't want for that particular priority level. So I started with the most advanced, everything's checked off, and I go through and I just knock out the ones I don't want as I'm going. Now I'm going to delete this one before I forget, get stuck with it. There is something else to remember, and we've run into this with some very large, complicated status displays. There is a limit to the number of status lines you can have. It's a big number. It's well over 100. I don't know what it is offhand. I want to say 158 for some reason is coming to mind. But if you check the forums, you can figure it out. I think it's been discussed there. Okay, so I think that's pretty much going to cover you for status display. Oh, there is one other thing. This little icon right up here. So if you click on that, you see how that turns the little bitty model there to color?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the toggle for turn everything else gray that does not meet any of my criteria.
I don't understand.
Don't understand why it's like that?
Okay, so it checks everything. So it's basically adding a priority 0 that is gray.
Yes.
For nothing.
So anything that doesn't meet any of the criteria, it turns gray. So just to demonstrate, so now we have the model and it's in its regular colored form. All right, now the status display filter is turned on. But in this particular job, we've not gone through and fleshed out those items. But you see it does hide the deck.
Right.
So if I go back in, there we go. All right, so we go back in, hide deck, set this back to gray. Okay. And now everything is gray that doesn't get an otherwise status to it.
Okay. And how would that, like, what would be a good occasion to use that?
So for me in particular, being colorblind, I need to cut down on the number of colors I'm looking at in the model. They need to be stark in contrast, and I need to see a limited number of colors. Otherwise, there's a good chance I can confuse the red of a status display and the kind of red of a beam. Beam is kind of red, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I will not be able to differentiate between those. So for me, it's that borderline. If nothing else applies, make it gray so that you just have that one uniform color to look at. It's also nice, you're looking at a model like this and you're zoomed way out. You can see that sea of nothing is applied here. And now I can work my way through that model and work on my statusing as I go.
Okay, so now I'm going to have Matt take me through, and this particular project has sequencing. We like to see the sequencing by colors. Just makes everything a little bit more obvious to make sure that we don't accidentally switch sequences, which I am famous for doing, actually, is for starting to put members into the wrong sequence. So let's build the sequence up from the base just to give an idea of what it would look like.
All right, so what you'll have to start with is your default priority. Okay. Now you can load that one if you want, but I would start with just loading a default priority, which is going to have nothing in particular to it. So let's say all you want this to do is sequences. We're going to leave out this whole masking existing member. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just delete this. So now we have this is the default that it will start one with, okay?
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead and pick a color. When any of these are true for the member, general status sequence is, now these aren't numbered, but you can pick from your list. Okay.
Okay.
So when it's the sequence W, it will be blue. And I want to add a priority. All I'm going to do now is change the color and change the sequence. Now, the interesting thing with this you can do is you can also do sequence ranges if you want. So the next one I'll do, we have canopies on this job, okay? Let's say I want all of the canopies to be included.
So pause here just for a second.
Sure.
So you defined your sequences in the job options, right?
Yes.
And so these are listed in the order that sequence 1 is W, sequence 2 is C, sequence 3 is E.
Correct.
So it's using that to define the range.
Correct. So these are in the order that they are input in the sequences under job options. And even though these are W, C, and E, these will be considered 1, 2, and 3 on another job. So this is universal across all jobs, no matter how you name your sequences.
And remember, guys, too, you still have, this is one of the great features that have been added recently, the save and load buttons there. So if you, instead of setting what we used to call zones, which still exists, but if you want to do zones, which is just a series of sequences, you can save those sequence groups and then use them throughout the job. So, later if you're loading sheets or something like that, you can track that information all the way through SDS2. It's a lot easier to use that way. It's a great feature that I think a lot of people aren't using as much as they should be.
All right, I think I've got all of these in now. Okay, so the way that we've got this set up, we've got all of our different colors. We've got our regular areas. We got the west, the east, elevator area, lintels, and all 3 of our canopies will be grouped as one color. Now, what I can do is if I click the save button, it will now give me the opportunity to save that in a location. Okay, so now what I can do is put this in a folder. Just stay right there. And it will try to overwrite based on the name it already has. Okay. If I want to create this as an entirely different one, then I want to click on this little save button up here. This will give me the opportunity to name it and locate it where I want. So under United Structural, we've created a folder. We have all of our own custom created status display filters. Now you can see we've got a million of these things and we only keep a few loaded. We keep our most popular ones loaded because we don't want this whole list to be something we've got to scroll through every single time. So we just keep the popular ones on the load list, and then everything else, if we want it, we'll go pick it specifically. But I could give this any name I want and then save it, and that'll be a new status display filter that I can load at my will.
So the save button at the bottom is essentially just save. The one up at the top is a save as.
Save as, yes.
Okay. So they might want to fix that
That might be worth
interface-wise.
tweaking.
It's a little confusing.
Honestly, I would prefer a save and a save as button here.
Right. And the save ... kind of implies more.
Right. I don't know what that would. Typically, I just use this one. Honestly, that's the first time I've clicked that save button. I knew that whatever it was, I didn't like it, so I just don't use it. But I couldn't remember why.
All right.
That's kind of the way it is with a lot of things. You know, you get bit by a bug once, and they may have fixed it, but I don't care. I'll work around that for the rest of my life. I won't even test it. You just get gun shy after it's hurt you so bad. Right. But the other thing that's nice is you've got this legend that you can click on. And this allows you to have a little toolbar that you can keep off to the side, just in case you can't remember what it is you've set. So yeah, I can click OK.
I need that all the time.
Yeah. Well, especially, once you get real complicated, as far as having a lot of different priorities, but the priorities themselves aren't all that complicated, this is really useful to have. Now, for that member checking one that we were just looking at, that would be bad because it will explain what each of the line items is under the priority. So that list can get obscenely long very quickly. But as far as something simple like sequences, this is really handy.
Yeah, I would say too, it would be nice if each priority had a description field that you could type
an optional description field.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that would show up here, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting thing I'd love to see.
Yeah.
Okay. So operating with that in mind. Now, you'll notice that, well, you may not notice because you don't know how I've set this job up. I have multiple canopies here and they're all colored differently. Right?
Yeah.
Now that's not what we wanted. We just set all that up. What happened? Well, what happened was I still had my original sequences set active. So I either need to pick it by selecting default here, which will give me the settings that I just created. Or if I put this back, just so we can see it happen again in real time, I have to go in to my status display configuration, and then I have to actually right click and set active.
That's what that little slider indicates.
That's what that little slider indicates. Or I have to go and click here. So there's lots of different ways that you can set it active, but if you don't set it active, you're not getting what it is you just plugged in.
Yeah.
So now I have that all broken apart.
But there is no way to set multiple statuses as active.
No, you get one at a time.
Okay. How would I make a copy of a status? Like if I've got a good status display, but for some reason on this job, I just need to tweak one of the priorities. And I don't want to mess with the original.
That goes back to the save button. So if I want to save this as a copy, I'll just save it, rename it something else, and change it.
Okay. That makes
sense. The other thing that you want to be aware of is you can pick what's going to be in this load list to start with. So I'll show you a couple little tricks that are handy here. So if you go up to user options, I'll also show you something to watch out for. You go into configuration files and then click on define statuses. This is where you can add. If you click add, you get that window and you can pop up and bring in as many statuses as you want, at least until you hit that limit of lines. And that'll be on your list. You also can pick what you want to be your default by picking it and hitting select or set active. When you launch modeling, that will be the thing that shows up first that you can just toggle on and off.
Yeah.
So what it used to do, and I don't know where this cutoff occurred, because again, once it bites you, you don't go back and go playing with it again. 2016, 2017, somewhere in there, maybe it's new for 2018. When you would hit that, it would wipe that list out for this session of modeling and only have that one item on your list. So now it intelligently appends it to the list. So now what I'm wondering is, let's do some exploring. Okay, it does not add it to your permanent list again. So it does not user option added. And now we should probably pick one. Let me load one that's not already on that list. I'll just pick something at total random then. Now the one thing I do find interesting is, yes, it will have loaded it, but it did not set it as my status. So I still do need to set it. Now I don't know what this does, but it seems to have wiped out most everything. Okay, so now let me just go check on that list, make sure that it did not, in fact, add it. and it did not. So that will not load it to the list permanently. It is just an in session, we'll load it for this time sort of a deal.
Okay. Now, is there a way to load an entire list of sequences? Or not sequences, of statuses?
To get them all on this list in one shot?
Yeah.
Yes, so if you go in, that load button may do it, but we'll try it from here. So if I pick this, and let's just grab, Shift select, get a bunch, and there they go. It'll load them all.
Nice. Okay.
Now, let's try it the other way.
Intelligent to create job folders for statuses that are job specific.
Yes. So just to try it off the load drop down, let me click a bunch this way. And yes, my list is becoming a mile long now. So I got the G's the first time, now I've got the H's. So yes, that does load from there as well. So they have fixed that functionality on that load button entirely. It now works exactly like it does from the actual configuration screen, which, yay.
Yes, excellent. All right, so now we got to tease the next video, which is going to be status select. I don't want to make these to run too long, but I'd like to show them that status select is a thing, and then we'll get more into it on how there are some ways to make it useful in the next video. So can you, let's for instance say, grab all the shear tab beams.
All right. So keyboard shortcut for status select. I don't like buttons. I'm going to throw that out there right now. To me, buttons are a slowdown. If it's something I use a lot, there's a keyboard shortcut for it. So default, the keyboard shortcut is SE.
Okay.
And I have not fiddled with that yet. So what that's going to do is actually launch you right back into your status display configuration with a tweak. Instead of setting a color, it now says select. Members, connection components, remember it has all these different selection items.
Okay.
Couple caveats here. One, whatever is active is the thing you'll actually get, so make sure you're paying attention to that. So if I want to set by sequence, I need to actually set this. So, and two, if you've got multiple selection priorities, I have not played with this. I don't know what that's going to do. I run it on default, the original default, and just have one thing to select, but I'll put as many selectable items in here as I want.
So for you old AutoCAD detailers, not assuming that you're actually old, but that you used to use AutoCAD, because I presume once you've used SDS2, you are never going back to AutoCAD for anything real, other than, you know, hey, I need to draw a pretty picture. This works just like the advanced selection or quick selection in AutoCAD, where, you know, I want to grab all joists which have a section size of 32 LH07 and a connection type of bearing, where you can filter those things. It uses the status display to do that, which is great, because then we can have both the selection to make those quick selections, but also it can be useful to just show those things so that when we're working on them, we can see what it is that we're working on. So we'll have more about that in our next video, hopefully our next video, if we don't get distracted by then. But this tool does exist. You should be looking into how to use it. There will be more to come. Hey guys, that wraps up this episode of the Steel Forum. As always, if you have any questions, let us know down in the comments. If you like the video, if you want to see more, hit those like and subscribe buttons to make sure that we can keep producing these. Also, if there's other videos that you want to see, other tips, tricks, features that you want to learn about, please let us know down in those comments. That way we can get to it as soon as possible. And as always, come back and visit us again on the Steel Forum.